I think we're ready to go. Excellent. Thank you very much. So good morning. Welcome to the special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of Wednesday, November the 4th. My name is Ian Morrison. I am the chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee. I'd like to welcome you all here. I'd also like to make a special welcome to Catherine McNeil, the alternate director for Area E. Welcome. And looks like we've got a full complement of directors here. Are we missing anyone? No, it looks like we also have a fair number of staff joining us today. You will all remember that this was put forward to today's date from a very long meeting that we had a little while ago, and I hope everyone's had an opportunity to read the material. And when we get started, I've got a little bit of an introduction before we turn over to staff. But everyone has had an opportunity to look at the agenda that was published last week. Well, firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge that we're gathered in different places throughout the territories of Coast Salish people, and want to acknowledge that. Also, make note that we have a meeting this afternoon, I believe, at 1:30. So it could be a long day. I think we're not quite as long an agenda for this afternoon, but we have a one-item special agenda today. And so I'll call the meeting to order and look to item number 1 on the agenda, and would ask if we could have a motion to approve today's agenda. Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. I should probably ask Ms. Harrison if there are any changes to the agenda that's been published.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are none.
Fantastic. We've been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. The motion carries. Does anybody know what that background noise is that I'm hearing? It sounds like somebody's running a shredder somewhere. That noise. Can we perhaps ask staff or ask anyone? I've got my mic open, but I don't see that CVRD host has their mic open as well. Well, let's try and muddle through. It's a little annoying, but it seems to have gone away for now. Ms. Harrison, I look to you for item number 2, the public input period.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some submissions, and just a clarification with regards to the feedback. It was Coralie's mic, so that's been muted. The first input item that I have is from Susan Kaufman, and it reads, good morning, Mr. Chair. I would like to comment on R1, the Harmonized Official Community Plan, APC referral. Confirmation by most APCs indicates there was not 100% endorsement from the APC. It is important to hear what and why. Some APCs did not find the draft 4270 consistent with the existing draft bylaw. Please explain. Be it recognized that APC provides recommendation to the EASC and should be considered as speaking for the public or providing an endorsement of the draft bylaw. And the motion from Area E APC February 11th, 2020 minutes, it was moved and seconded that the draft HOCP is generally consistent with the January 21, 2020 draft local area plan. And the motion was carried with a request that the CVRD engages in community follow-up regarding the draft LAP in each of Area E neighborhoods. The APC referral does not replace communications, community consultation, and bylaw 4329. The wording of this bylaw would appear to grant authority to staff to make significant changes without consultation of the elected officials or public consultation. Please explain. Concern that staff have recommended that the bylaw not be be considered or is exempt from public hearing. Bylaw 4330, why are area D, G, and I not included in the language? Does the explanation table provided for this bylaw suggest that this is new information that was not provided to the APC for consideration of consistencies with the existing OCP? Staff analysis. Of the 3 items, the following does not appear to be qualified in the staff report. Consider in conjunction with other relevant planning and policies. Explanation, please. While it has been recognized that the HOCP will provide better and consistent references for the CVRD planning staff and perhaps professional consultants, it is also creating a massive document for a member of the public to consult before application. Area E went from 2 documents, the OCP and zoning bylaw, to HOCP, Area E, LAP, Satlam, LAP, Area E, zoning bylaw. How will the HOCP reconcile with the individual zoning bylaws? Respectfully, Susan Kaufman. And I believe that is it for public input for this committee, this special committee.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. On to item number 3, and just before we start with R1 and I turn it over to Ms. Breen and her team, just want to sort of set the table as to I think a little bit of what staff is hoping to see today, and where we how we might proceed in ensuring that everybody has an opportunity to participate and contribute to where we're going and what is sort of anticipated for an outcome for today. I've been in discussions with staff, and this has been a long process with a lot of effort, a lot of energy put into this. And I believe where staff is wanting to go is to begin the process where we are putting it into an official form where there can be referrals sent out, there can be further discussions. So what we have before us today is not by any means a final version of what we will ultimately end up going to the public with. So there is still opportunities for APCs to perhaps contribute, for individual directors to have to seek clarification and contribute. So at this point, there's recommendations that we have here that are pointing to recommendation to the board for first and second reading. This isn't anything that anybody is insisting on. I think staff would like to see this put before the board and at least considered for first reading to get a process started so that we can start to plan for the community engagement, to get out there and to begin to have those discussions. So it's not a be-all end-all today, and this is still somewhat of a general discussion, and I don't believe that staff are necessarily looking for each director to bring out that one nugget or one gem or one concern in their area in today's meeting. If there's a general discussion or topic that you think is appropriate to be brought up, then fair enough, do it. But if there's fairly area specific items that you think may have been not properly worded or may have been put in that it shouldn't have been, we still have that opportunity to work with staff to make sure that we're getting the document that we want to put before the public. So in discussions with staff, I said I would set the table in that fashion so that we don't have to drill down into the very finest of detail today. There are still opportunities to do that. I think staff want to see this very long process become official and put before the board. So I look to Ms. Breen, if you could give me a nod if that was essentially where we wanted to start, and she's nodding. So I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Breen and her team who have material to present to us today. And I think would it be best that we wait till the end of your presentation, and I will start a speakers list right away. So everybody agreed that we can wait to the end of the presentation, and I believe staff are going to stay online for the entirety of the meeting. So I don't see anybody disagreeing, so we'll wait to the end for questions. Ms. Breen and your team, please go ahead.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. And I don't know if my computer is still making the same sound, but that's the only thing I have on. So I apologize if that's what it is. But it's my computer that's making that sound. So this morning, we have provided a new presentation for you, not as long as last time, with a little bit more depth on some matters. It won't be a review of previous information, but we will kind of review the content of 4270. I'll address the purpose of 4329, and which will address some of the comments or respond to some of the comments, participation comments. And we do have, your preference, we can go straight through, but we do have some slide breaks for questions along the way, which we can just keep proceeding with or take questions at that moment. So I'm going to turn off my video and Rob is going to run the PowerPoint. So last time I talked a little bit about the DNA, the planning bylaws DNA, as we refer to it. And the process of harmonization and then modernization is the kind of clearing up and of the DNA, so to speak. There are three main text components in the bylaw, official community plan 4270. Schedule A is the main portion where you see the residential designation, for example, that applies very broadly, things that apply, policies that apply broadly throughout the electoral areas. Schedule B are the local area plans, and there are 9 of them. Schedule C are the development permit areas, and we have gone from 44 to 13. Last time I reviewed kind of the legal requirements and constraints and the possibilities. And this time I'm just highlighting for you the main areas that you'll find in Schedule A, the official community plan, the policy areas, the land use designation, the development approval information, which is meant to be used hand in hand with the development approval information bylaw. Just a reminder that the policies must be within jurisdiction, and we've moved a lot of policies that are in your current OCPs that were out of jurisdiction into objectives where the board can have statements or of matters of opinion. It also includes some implementation goals and some performance measures. Schedule B, the local area plans. These are meant to capture the heritage, local identity, the sub-land use designations, parks, and also performance measures. And by that, just for clarification, that, for example, would be looking at the various land use designations, how much are within the containment boundaries, how much are outside of the containment boundaries, and they're meant to be an indicator over time. Schedule C, the development permit areas are, next slide, please, Rob. Last time I mentioned that have moved from 44 to 13. You'll now find 6 parts to them. And again, this is what if you open up the Local Government Act, this is what you would see under the Local Government Act and the DPAs in terms of the various permitted categories. Moving into the modernization, we'll find that the guidelines will become even more specific and more clear, stay within the CVRD jurisdiction. filtered for the box content. And what we mean by that is there'll be some items that will actually may perhaps move into zoning or other tools. And you'll find them to be more concise. Bylaw 4329, the bylaw revision bylaw, is a bylaw that enables staff to move existing guidelines from the HOCP into the modernized OCP or the zoning bylaw. It doesn't change the content. It just allows this. It's an administrative bylaw, so it doesn't require public hearing. And it is meant simply to move information into another bylaw. I didn't get into this last time, but we thought some of the feedback we had was that on the DPAs, that the directors want a little bit more information in terms of where we're going on the modernization. And this certainly reflects a lot of comments that we had from the APCs and previous resolutions from the board directing staff to replace certain mapping information. So in part one, you'll find the general guidelines, and we'll provide even more clarity and consistency as we move into modernization. On riparian, we'll be reviewing the guidelines further. On the DPA 2, there's new Madrona data, and the board has already directed staff to replace that, so that will happen next year. We'll be looking at the marine uplands and foreshore protection for those electoral areas with coastal boundaries. The aquifer protection DPA, there's 5 electoral areas in that right now. A, B, C, D, and E has opted in as part of the modernization. So we'll be looking at expanding that with community consultation. That's part 2. Getting into part 3, the protection from hazardous conditions. There is new wildfire hazards. So GIS will be replacing that, and we'll be looking at amending the guidelines for consistency. The Shawnigan bylaw, which was raised recently, a new bylaw is coming forward to the board, 4348, with the new data from the NHC study that will be adopted by a separate bylaw, and the maps will be included in the HOCP, depending on at what point this bylaw is adopted. And the bylaw that's adopted will have a version of the maps actually with the flood construction level on it and adopted separately, so that can be amended easily without amending the OCPs. The OCP will have the maps without the FCL on it, with a notation to refer to the bylaw. And River Bottom, which was recently, I believe on the 28th of October, presented to the board, will be the next bylaw that we will be working on. New technical reports, the one for Saltaire, I believe an RFP will be issued towards the end of this year for Saltaire. Woodley Range, the current technical report and the DPA don't match, so we'll be looking for a new technical report for Woodley Range. And then also Cowichan Bay will require one. Protection of farming, that will have a review, and it'll happen concurrently with new local area agriculture plans. Form and character, Rob's going to talk about this on the mapping side of it, but that will happen in 2021 in consultation with the communities as we look at which local area plans will have neighborhood plans and which will have retain their local area plans with some kind of variation. And then finally, part 6 is the energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions. And there's 5 electoral areas currently in this one. Area E opted in, and we'll be looking at a fairly comprehensive review of this DPA going forward. new. The view corridor, which I did address in the last presentation, is there. And bylaw 4342 will be coming forward. And this will replace a DPA that was removed. And we were advised that it was ultravirus. And another bylaw 4343, and we'll talk about both these bylaws in subsequent meetings, environmental protection for drainage will improve some of the DPA guidelines. That's a bit of a snapshot, and I don't know through the chair if you want to stop or if we should just proceed.
Well, the first thing you would need to do is drop your presentation so I can see my colleagues. And I look to committee. Are you okay with proceeding ahead at this point, or are there any specific questions that anybody would like to have? Director Smith, are you trying to get my attention, or are you cleaning your camera? Okay. Thank you. So I don't see anybody wanting to pose questions to you right now, Ms. Breen. So I believe, Director Smith is wanting to direct a question to you. So Director Smith, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a question. I heard you say that some of the areas have opted in for some of the items like the aquifer and then something else. And I was just wondering, I had sort of understood that we were moving forward with all of us. So what is some areas opting in, and then has there been discussions that other areas should actually opt in? And maybe you can clarify that. Thank you.
Yep, certainly through the chair. In both those cases, it was Area E, which was supported through a resolution that they would be modernizing concurrently with this. And in discussion on, so that's what happened in those instances. If in most of those cases, for example, the aquifers, in Area H's case, and with discussions with their APC, they did, although they supported the modernization of some of the DPAs, they did not want to move to that in the harmonization process because they wanted community consultation. So in the instance of Area E, the APCs wanted to make those advancements at this time.
Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if this is the right spot for this question, but I noticed there's going to be a new marine OCP applying to those areas that have oceanfront. Can you maybe explain why we need that separate from the it was?
Through the chair, either a marine OCP or a marine plan, but that is the intention, that there will be attention paid to that specifically. So at this stage, we're carrying forward the harmonized objectives and policies, but it does require quite a bit of work in itself.
Okay, I'll follow up.
Go ahead.
Maybe just not clear why we need a step before it was integrated, or is this going to be a lot more attention paid to marine than there has been in our current OCPs? Is that the thinking?
There's some jurisdictional considerations, and so we're looking for some clarification before we embark on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions at this point in the presentation? I don't see anyone to this point. So Ms. Breen, please proceed with the next part of your presentation.
Thank you. And this is now over to my colleague, Rob Grant.
Thank you, committee, and thank you, Coralie, for including me in this. And so we we're sure that you're becoming quite familiar with the map schedules. So we're trying to cover things off that you may or may not be aware of. So one of the things that I'll bring to your attention at this point in review of the map schedules is the floodplain mapping and bylaws that Coralie mentioned previously, where there's information for flood hazard coming in and out of DPAs and things like that. And because we have a couple of floodplain bylaws coming forth, then we will be creating a schedule, potentially K, to deal with the floodplain mappings at the OCP level. Another piece that is going to be part of the modernization conversation will be Schedule P, that will be dealing specifically with the parks. And so just to bring your attention that floodplains and floodplain mapping will be addressed in the OCP, with the details happening at a different bylaw. And so the other thing that I was going to bring to your attention is just bringing the legends to the foreground. And on the screen right now, what I'm showing you is an OCP land use designation for the south in the Mill Bay, Shawnigan, Cobble Hill area. And I'm just going to bring your notice to the legend on the left, where there's not very many designations, and particularly in residential, I'll just point out residential has just one designation, and that color is scattered around the map. What you'll notice also that's different about these maps from the existing maps is there are no labels on the maps. So we worked very hard on the design of the maps and the legends to bring greater clarity and consistency from one area to the other. And so that's the OCP land use designations. When we go into the finer detail of the local area plans, then the first thing that you'll notice is the number of sub-designations increases. So where at the OCP level we had one residential designation, here what we'll notice is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 sub-designations in the legend that correspond to the local area plan. And what that does is at the local area plan level, it brings additional objectives and policies over and above the regional or the OCP designation of residential. Just a comparative to compare the legends between the OCP and the local area plans. The residential, it's good to note that the residential OCP designation is still relevant at the local area plan. So one of the things for me that I had to get used to is if I wanted to know about a property, say in Mill Bay area or Cobble Hill or wherever, our existing OCPs are structured on the electoral areas. So when I first started working with our harmonized OCP, I was defaulting to the local area plans. And so I kept reminding myself that I had to start back at the OCP with the residential objectives and policies. The OCP objectives and policies still are relevant at the local area plan. The local area plan just has more objectives and policies specific to the local communities. And so the other thing that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is that not all map schedules have a direct local area plan context. And so the development permit areas is that area that in the OCP Schedule C is the DPA text, and Schedule U is the supporting maps to the DPAs. And what you'll notice here is there is no local area plan connected. And as our example to show how the DPAs are cross-jurisdictional as far as electoral areas go, I'll just bring part 5 in the forming character to everyone's attention. And DPA 9 is intensive residential development, DPA 10 multifamily residential, 11 commercial and mixed use, and DPA 12 is the industrial development. And so DPA 9, what we're showing on this map is the intensive residential development. And what we'll show to you is that this is an electoral area boundary. Here's an electoral area boundary. We have Mill Bay, Shawnigan Lake, and Cobble Hill. And where previously the DPAs would be separated, what we are doing now is we're combining all of the similar DPAs into one DPA. And so now we don't have an electoral area A map, we have a DPA 9 map. And it shows the areas where that DPA is appropriate. DPA 10, same general area. I just circled it because the yellows don't show up quite as nicely as the pink on the screen. But again, it highlights that this DPA covers areas in the Shawnigan Lake area, Cobble Hill, and the Mill Bay area. DPA 11, we're showing, which is the commercial and mixed use. And we have much more areas defined as far as DPA 11 goes. DPA 12, which is industrial development. And again, this is a good example where in the existing OCP for Area B, there are single lot DPAs. And so what we'll find now is those single lot DPAs are now part of a more global, combined, consistent DPA. And that's a quick little run through of the map series. And if anybody has any questions, I will close out on this. So
Thank you, Rob. I know I've got a couple of quick questions. Anybody else want to pose any questions at this point? And I'll try not to get down into the weeds here. I think this is more of a general question that I have. Anybody else have any desire to pose a question at this point? Okay, I'll just proceed. So, Rob, just from a general perspective, and there's been a lot of reading done by the folks here today, and I'm looking at this and I'm hoping I'm coming from a 30,000 foot level where you've listed, what did you get to, 11 or 12 DPAs?
I think there's 13.
13, okay.
Thanks.
I know that early on in the process, there were concerted efforts to keep DPAs to a minimum, and looks like we got a baker's dozen of them here now. So you know, the application of these DPAs. So are we going to see this more in the HOCP as a general document? Are they residing in there? I've sort of lost track. Are these going into the individual area plans?
So the deviation with the development permit areas is that they've been taken out of the existing OCPs, which are electoral area based. And instead of putting them in the local area plans, They are now residing right in the main OCP as Schedule C. And so what you'll notice from the maps that I showed is the areas that are relevant or appropriate to the DPA are shown on one map. And so whether you're in electoral area C or A, the DPA guidelines are consistent across the board.
And fair enough, and that's kind of what I thought, but I've just, do we now have applicability of 13 DPAs across the entire region? And
Yes.
and are you, are staff comfortable with, you know, that's a fairly substantial jump in from my area that I think we had 3 DPAs to a broader number, and I'm not saying that's it's a bad thing. It's just it's a big jump, and I see Coralie's come on screen. So, which of you wants to take that one?
Through the chair, the applicability would be specific to the lots or parcels being actually shown on the map. So just for clarification, the guidelines you'll find more general consistency, and there may be occasions where we might have to say in the guidelines, and on this lot, there's some variation, but you won't have to look through various different documents to find it. It will all be there on, for example, industrial. So it's really the mapping that goes along with the text. The mapping is showing where the text applies.
And if I could just add to that, if I may, that'll be one of the subtle changes in how we deal with the OCP and the DPAs. Previously, we may have created a DPA for a specific application that came in. Perhaps it was an industrial rezoning of some sort. And so in order to accommodate the development permit area for that lot, we would have created a whole new DPA. Moving forward, we already have the industrial guidelines for industrial, so we don't have to recreate the wheel, so to speak, in if we have an application that comes through. What we'll do is we can amend the map to include that parcel, whether it's in area F or area H, G, doesn't really matter. So the number of DPAs shouldn't expand greatly, but where the DPA is applicable, then we'll keep on top of that.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff at this juncture of the presentation? I don't see anybody raising hands, so Rob or Coralie, proceed to the next section.
So I'll just introduce this section. We're going to talk a little bit more about what is happening and a little finer grain on the modernization in this next segment. I'm going to introduce the transect, and then Rob is going to take you through what's actually happening on the ground in GIS, and also we do have some consultants helping us with this. You've seen the transect before. Last week when we were looking at this, we showed some diagrams of Rashinda's work of the current lay of the land, of the designations and the relationship to the zones. And you saw lines that were crisscrossing each other going across the screen. And the process that we've been going through for several months and will be going through for the next several months is untangling that and providing the schematic and more order. So over to you, Rob, now to go through this.
Thank you, Coralie. And at this point, I'm just going to remind everyone that the Transect is a concept model of how policy, or the OCP, and regulation, the zoning, interconnect in the real world. And so one of the things that we started to do with GIS is find the relationship between the OCP and zoning, and where it applies on the ground. And so that's where the crisscrossing of the lines started to come in, because we found that there was a residential OCP designation, but it may have had mixed use zoning. And so this maze of relationship of the OCP to the local plans and down to the zoning, we are working with Modus on proposing a framework that that better aligns the OCP with the zoning. And we're working on a framework, and it's taken quite a bit of time to tease out what is zoned and what is the OCP designation. Do they match? Are they consistent? And so here's the brief process in which we are working with Modus and developing this framework. So one of the big things is pulling density and the general intent from the electoral area OCPs and the area the local area plans. In some cases, the densities and the general intent was vague or non-existent. So that's one thing that we will be working through. We'll be organizing the designations in a framework that better align across the Transect model, or the concept, as well as across the CBRD as it sits. We need to identify any of the outliers in the land use diagrams. So, for example, if there's a zone that is inconsistent with what the OCP is stating as a land use designation, we'll need to tease those out and correct them. Recategorize the designations based on further analysis. And we will be mapping these new designations to actually see what the framework looks like on the ground. Does it make sense to have these designations in this neighborhood or in this area? And we'll be refining the boundaries and the maps as we go. The urban containment boundaries and neighborhood plans, local area plans, all of that will be teased out in the framework. So what's been happening to date is there are currently 166 land use designations, and so far we've been able to tease it down to 20 designations. And one of the ways that that with the work with Modus that's happening is, in some cases, a designation specifies a certain density, and so what we found is there were a number of designations with very specific densities. And so with the Transect and reviewing the designations and zoning, what the framework will have is develop thresholds. And so from rural, large lot, acreages, low density, 1 unit per hectare, moving across the Transect and across the region, we have suburban areas where there's large lots, mediums to small, another threshold of 30 units per hectare. So now we're getting a bit more dense, and then we move into the urban or the village, ground-oriented, low-rise, multifamily. And in some cases, it would be measured, density would be measured by square footage as opposed to frontage or or acreage in the large case of lots. So the other thing that has a tendency to happen with this, with these thresholds is the levels of service. Rural, we probably won't see any community water or sewer. As we densify and get into the suburban, then we still have relatively large lots that may or may not be on community water or sewer, or one or the other. And then moving into the urban, higher density, then our services are required. So we're looking at all of this together. And just as an example of how the combination and the alignment, the realignment of the OCP subdesignations, the local area plan subdesignations. This screen is showing us we have 5 local area plan subdesignations, and we're proposing them to go into one OCP designation called small lot rural, and setting a max density of 1 unit per hectare. And you'll notice that these sub-designations are coming across the region, Area B, E, F, H. And so we're taking the local area plan, seeing what the similarities are, and pooling them together. The other example is we're proposing 4 sub-designations and going to a large lot rural with a max of a 0.2 unit per hectare. And again, realigning the sub-designations into a one singular designation that provides a range of densities and areas, and that will give us flexibility to take that those density ranges and lot sizes and go into the zoning and then prescribe the greater detail in those areas. So that is a lowdown on the next stage and some of the work that we've been doing with the contractors in realigning the subdesignations.
Thanks, Rob. It said questions in your next, or on that last slide. I see I've got Director Smith. Is there anyone else that would like to pose a question to either Coralie or Rob? Go ahead, Director Smith.
Thank you. I was kind of looking at the 2 different designations there, and in Area G zoning, the majority of lot situation is a 0.4 of a hectare, and it's either, so where does that fit into something like this, because it's sort of in between?
Yeah, so the approach moving into modernization is that dense, or that lot size of 0.4 hectares. You mentioned that it's in your current zoning, and being that specific, that would be where it would belong. It would belong in the zoning. At the OCP level, that zone would fit into, say, a residential designation that would have a density range of units per hectare, but also stipulate the size of a range of the size of the lots as well. So at the OCP level, we want to say in this area, it's residential, it's rural residential, and the density range is from here to here, the lot size from here to here. Now you want to get a bit more specific on a street level, then that's where the zoning will come in and prescribe the greater detail of, okay, in this neighborhood and on this street, the minimum lot size is this. And whereas what we've found in teasing out the information from the OCP, and the zoning is sometimes the OCP and the zoning actually contradicted themselves. The lot areas and or the densities were different. So we'll be rectifying that. We'll better align the OCP and the zoning with respect to lot size and density ranges.
Any other questions for Rob at this point? Don't see any other questions at this point. I would ask, where are you at as far as your presentation? Are you nearing an end? Are you how many more sections have you got? And I'm just looking at the clock. I know we were a little late getting underway, but we may take a quick break in between the conclusion of your presentation and then into further questions. So any guidance on that from staff?
Sure, through the chair. Alison Garnett's online right now, and she will be explaining draft 4330, the zoning consistency bylaw, and then questions if there are any, and just next steps and a timeline. That's the remainder of the presentation for today.
Well, that sounds great. So I think that we can proceed through to the conclusion of your overall presentation, and then that'll take us well past, I'm thinking, an hour, and then we can, depending on the will of the committee, but I'd suggest we take a quick break and then come back. So everybody, does that make sense to everyone? Nobody nodding in opposition. So welcome, Ms. Garnett, and the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. So I would just like to present a few slides to explain Bylaw 4330, which is in your big package that you have to read. So Bylaw 4330, Rob, if you could just move the slide ahead. I know you're managing that for us. Thank you. It is basically an amendment bylaw to several of the electoral area zoning bylaws. And the overall purpose is to create consistency between the zoning bylaws and OCP 4270. The primary purpose of the bylaw 4330 is to remove regulatory content from the OCPs and implement it in zoning bylaws. We know a large part of the harmonization project was to bring the HOCP up to a sort of higher policy level. But some of the existing electoral area OCPs, they contain a lot of regulatory type content that is better off being implemented in the zoning bylaw where the rules can actually be applied to development. So that is the large purpose of Bylaw 4330. It is important to note that it does not apply to all of the electoral areas. It only applies to those shown on the right-hand side of the slide. So areas A and C, B, E, F, and H. And those were just the only areas where zoning and bylaw amendments were needed. So if we go to the next slide, I'll explain the process in drafting this bylaw. We reviewed the local area plans and the official community plans. And we looked for, as I said, regulatory policies that can be implemented to streamline the HOCP. And I mean streamlined because once the regulatory policy is implemented in the zoning bylaws, the policy doesn't need to be carried over to the HOCP. So we've got a streamlined final document. All changes were tracked in spreadsheets. So it's all clearly documented. And so if you were to read Bylaw 4330 on its own, it's quite difficult to understand. It's just sort of the nature of how amendment bylaws are written. So in your agenda package, there is attachment C1, which is an explanatory table. It provides the rationale for each of the amendments. It has the exact wording taken from Bylaw 4330, and then an explanation of that, what the amendment is trying to accomplish, and the rationale. And I'll take you through a few examples just to clarify. Okay, so we are missing, Rob, are the examples in the slides? There we go. Thank you very much. So for this is an example from Area B. So this is existing OCP policy from Area B. So the village commercial designation will allow for residential units above commercial, provided two conditions are met. One is that water and sewer servicing is provided, and the second is that the residential units are located above the commercial use. So our purpose here is to remove this content from the OCP and insert it into the zoning bylaw. And we know that the associated zoning bylaw section is going to be the C2 local commercial zone in the zoning bylaw. So the next slide will show what, this is kind of an excerpt from the explanatory table. So on the left-hand column, you've got the wording from the amendment bylaw. So we're adding to section 9.5, residential suites located above a permitted commercial use if parcel is serviced by community water and sewer. Add a differently worded explanation of the amendment in the middle column. So what we're trying to do here is to allow residential suites located above a commercial use if servicing is there. And we know it applies to the C2 local commercial zone. And of course, the C2 local commercial zone is section 9.5 in the zoning bylaw. The rationale is to implement OCP policy. So the next example applies to Area F. This is an existing Area F OCP policy in a multifamily section. And the policy says to provide private ground level outdoor space for at ground level units. So again, our purpose is to remove this content from the OCP and insert it into the zoning bylaw. And the relevant section of the zoning bylaw is the MR1, mixed residential zone, which is associated with the Coubertin development. So the next slide shows the excerpt from the explanatory table. So we're going to insert the following in section 5.13. A minimum of 14 meters square of private open space is required at finished grade. On its own, that doesn't mean much, but if we look into the middle column, the explanation of the amendment is that we're adding a requirement for private open space for multifamily or secondary dwelling unit to the MR1 zone. And the rationale is to implement the OCP policy. And in this case, we mention a specific amendment bylaw because it's a recent amendment to the Area FOCP associated with the Coubertin development. And for our final example, from Area H, this is an agricultural policy that says that one seasonal farmer operated agricultural outlet or produce stand not exceeding 32 square meters should be permitted. So this is a regulatory type policy. So we're going to remove it from the OCP, insert it into the zoning bylaw, and it will go into the general regulations section of the zoning bylaw. So the explanatory table says that we're adding the following to the general regulations. So farm gate sales is going to be like a new subheading within the general regulations section of the zoning bylaw, and explaining that for zones permitting the sale of products grown or reared on a farm, the farm stands shall be limited to a certain size and be used to sell agricultural products. And the explanation is just simply to add general regulations for farm gate sales. And again, the rationale is to implement OCP policy. So I hope that those examples provide an example of how Bylaw 4330 is intended to sort of streamline the HOCP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garnett. I turn to the committee members and see if there's anyone that has any particular interest or questions or need clarification on any of what's just been presented. Wow, that was very clear. Well done. So we, I believe we've got a little bit in the way of clarification or wind up next from Ms. Breen. And so thank you very much, Allison. I trust you're staying around for questions a little later if we get back into this area. So Ms. Breen, please proceed.
Thank you. So through the chair, just a quick recap of next steps as presented in the staff report. For draft bylaws 4270, the OCP for electoral areas, 4329, the administrative bylaw, revision bylaw to move guidelines from the HOCP into, or some of the guidelines into the modernized zoning bylaw, and 4330, which Allison just recapped for the committee, the zoning consistency bylaw. The staff report recommendation was for first and second reading of bylaws 4270, 4329, and 4330. Particularly bylaw 4270 requires that the readings are considered in consideration with the financial plan and any waste management plan, meaning consistency, and considered in conjunction with other relevant planning and policies, and also is asking for direction for external agency referrals. The staff report didn't mention this specifically, but further to the discussion last time from committee would also be recommending direction to include in the report back to committee a plan for a public information virtual meeting. And following that, should a committee wish to proceed, there would be public hearing and third and final readings. And the next slide, Rob, please. And just this timeline, which we can send to you separately, it's been split in two, but it does provide an overview of the relating planning processes through till the end of 2022. And that includes the current housing needs assessment, mapping changes, the marine plan that we discussed earlier, a climate plan, and the agriculture local plans, which were also mentioned previously. And that concludes our presentation for today.
Thank you, Ms. Breen, and all the other presenters for the work that you've done here. I think that helps me to have a greater clarity as to this enormous project that's underway. You've given us a bit of a roadmap as to how to move forward, and I'm not sure whether committee is looking to go straight into consideration of a recommendation or if there's any further questions. I think I've got some questions around timeline and the differences between proceeding to first reading, whether there's a benefit to a slow measured pace or whether we could get right into first and second reading and what the committee's desire is around that. So it's just after 11. We just started a little after 10. We're gonna have a long day. We're 60 minutes in. Would everybody be interested in a 10-minute break, 8-minute break, and then come back? So I've got a couple of thumbs up. So it's 11:07. So I'll call you back for 11:15, but our hard start's going to be 11:20. So we'll see you all back here. Remember to close off your camera and your microphone. Thank you. Further clarification. I guess the question is, are we in a position where we feel comfortable in taking a step and making a recommendation to the board that we begin the process? Okay, so wait a minute. I've got Director Wilson and Yanni DiNardo and Acton, so hang on. But I also have Ms. Harrison wanting to jump in at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to advise you while you were speaking, we weren't streaming, but we are now. Thank you.
People didn't have to hear what I was saying anyway. So I will go to Director Wilson first. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for staff here. This is a good presentation and it does lay out everything that I was hoping to see. Are there any plans to also present this to the APC chairs? I have a very good APC here, and I have a very good chair who's been paying very close attention to everything that's been going on, but I would love for her to be able to attend it with the other APC chairs if possible, so that they can have their input as well.
I think that's going to be for Ms. Breen, who's stick handling this for us. Ms. Breen, did you hear the question?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. We can include a referral back to the APCs as part of the overall referral, yes.
Any follow-up, Director Wilson? Excellent. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to move that recommendation.
You can certainly do that if you're so inclined. Is Director Salmon seconding that resolution? So we do have and you're talking about the recommended resolution that was with the package. All right. So we'll deem that to be properly moved and seconded. I will go to Director Acton, who is on the speaker's list. Or Director Yanni Denardo, did you want to speak to it now, or can I come back to you? Okay, Director Acton, please proceed.
Well, could you read the resolution? And I'm not sure that my question applies to this, so maybe I should wait.
Well, I can read the resolution if you would like. And the recommended resolution is that it be recommended to the board, one, that CVRD bylaw number 4270, the Couch Valley Regional District Official Community Plan for Electoral Areas Bylaw 2020, be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading. Two, the CVRD bylaw 4329, and that's the Couch Valley Regional District Revision Bylaw for Official Community Plan and Zoning Bylaws 2020, be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading. Three, CVRD bylaw number 4330, Zoning Bylaw Harmonization Bylaw 2020, be forwarded to the board for first and second reading. Four, CVRD OCP for Electoral Areas Bylaw 2020 be considered in conjunction with the CVRD's 5-year financial plan and solid waste management plans. Five, CVRD bylaw number 4270, the CVRD OCP and Electoral Areas Bylaw 2020 be referred to the Agricultural Land Commission, Capital Regional District, Cowichan School District 79, Islands Trust, Ladysmith, Nanaimo School District number 68, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Transportation, Regional District of Nanaimo, and the following First Nations listed: Cowichan Tribes, DT Dot, First Nation, Hull First Nation, Hulkaminum Treaty Group, Liaxin First Nation, Malahat First Nation, Paquichan First Nation, Penelakut, and Staminas First Nation, and Subasat First Nation. And I gather there was an indication that we wanted this to also include referral to our APCs.
Thank you. I guess I have a comment then, if we're going to refer to the APCs.
Can you hang on? Can you hang on for just a sec? That was what was intended by your resolution, Director Yanni Denardo, that it go to the APCs as well.
Yeah, I understood it, the APC chairs, but I guess the APC, that's fine too. But what I heard Director Wilson said his chair, but it's fine with me.
So that will be included in the list of referrals. Director,
I've already shared it with my APCs, but to have a referral would be great. But what I would encourage is that there's staff support around that. Perhaps it's a presentation as a WebEx, and APCs can join, whoever wants to join, kind of approach, or a supportive approach would be preferred on my part. But my question is, the work that staff has done has been really thorough and has been really close to detail. But I'm concerned about, at least at this level, if there's any errors, how are we able to amend those errors later, or where are our checks and balances going to keep happening going forward?
Thank you, Director Acton. Ms. Breen.
Through the chair, the OCP, including all the schedules discussed today, can be amended at any time.
Does that answer your question, Director Acton?
I guess. I guess I'm. So yeah. So essentially, none of it's written in stone at this point, obviously. But I just want to understand how it's been combed through, and if there are some errors, to change it's not a huge deal, and yes, some kind of system to ensure that we don't have a whole bunch of errors moving forward.
Ms. Breen?
Through the chair, there is a period of time prior to public hearing where we can make changes. And I'm encouraging everyone. I've had calls from several of the directors to look carefully at the plan, have the communities, and that's one of the purposes of the external referral and the APCs as well. Another check-in. I can't assure you that there won't be any errors. We've certainly done our best to try to assure you that the checks and balances have been there. We've documented quite extensively by area the current objectives and policies and what has happened to them in terms of carryover, et cetera. We don't anticipate a lot of errors, but just to assure you, should something be there after the bylaw was adopted, the bylaw can be amended.
Final follow-up, Director Acton?
Thank you. So not on that topic, but on the initial engagement with community was done really creatively. And
Director Acton, can I ask you to hang on? I'll come back to you. We've got other people on the speakers list. I've got Ms. Chiralf, and we'll go to Director Wilson next. Ms. Chiralf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make one comment, and that is that the statutory bylaw adoption process, the statutory bylaw process is constructed in a way to allow changes to occur during the process. So it's never anticipated that a bylaw is going to be perfect when it's first drafted, and it is anticipated that as a result of referral comments and as you move along the process from first towards second reading and then later towards adoption, that there will be some minor changes or potentially major changes that need to happen, and the bylaw can be amended through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chiralf. Somebody's got a microphone or something on. I've got roaring in my ears. Okay, I think it's gone away. Director Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand, Director, the concerns about mistakes, but I would challenge anyone anywhere in the world to come up with a document that doesn't contain mistakes. Even the Supreme Court is not capable of that. So I think everybody's explained quite well that this is not a final document. It is a fluid thing which is going on. As Ms. Breen has said, it can be changed at any time. My point about sending it to the APCs is that, yes, it will go to the chairs. And if the chairs are on top of what they're doing, and most of them are, then they would circulate that to their members as well. And I fully expect that Ms. Breen, having done the job that she's done so far, would be fully involved with making sure that they have the support that they need from her department and everything else, as she has done in the past. So again, thank you, Ms. Breen, for what you've been doing there.
Thank you, Director Wilson. And I'll go back to Director Acton, who's dropped off our list here, but and I'm glad that we're having this discussion, because I think a purposeful, almost plotting approach to this makes a lot of sense, and I think part of what the staff are looking for is do we want to go to that first and second reading to help this along a little bit quicker, or did we want to do a more cautious approach and maybe just recommend first reading at the board, but we've got a resolution for first and second, and it means that we're going to have to all pay attention to this and make sure that the appropriate referrals are happening, and that any input that is going to come in from either the official referral agencies or APC members, that they are brought in and brought into the system quickly. So I've got Director Acton, or actually Director Acton, you've spoken. I'm going to go to Director Smith. Please proceed, Director Smith.
Can I make an amendment and remove the second reading and just go for the first reading at this time?
You can absolutely make that amendment, and I gather it would be on all of them, and let's see if we have a seconder. It looks like Director Wilson is going to second that resolution. So we have on the floor a amendment resolution, and I'm assuming that you're referring to each of the 5 items that are listed there, so that instead of first and second, we're just going to do first at this point. So I'd like to, I was just about to test the House, but Director Salmon, would you, on the amendment?
Yeah, well, just a question. So broadly, the question is whether we're just going forward a little quicker or a little slower, but is this this is all just still part of the harmonized, and we will have a whole separate, when we get to the modernized, we will have a whole new set of bylaws with the first, second, third as well. Am I right on that?
Ms. Breen?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. Just for clarification, there's no statutory difference between first and second reading, but giving it first reading is a slower process and gives just another opportunity for that second consideration or second thought.
So just follow up then.
Director Salmon, go ahead.
I think I prefer the first and second now, given that, I mean, the way these things work, it's going to be years and years if we keep dragging up these department parts. So my 2 bits.
Thank you, Director Salmon, and I was going to move to test the House to see what the preference was fairly quickly. I'll go to Director Acton, who was the last person that I have on the list to speak, so please go ahead on the amendment.
It's not on the amendment.
Okay, so then I'd like to take the pulse of the committee and see whether we want to consider amending the resolution to first reading only. Everyone's clear on what the question will be? Great, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I count 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion is defeated. Back to the main motion. Director Acton, is your question in regards to the resolution on the floor? Or is it something of another nature? What would you like to proceed with?
Well, I just wanted to, obviously, we're going to have a process of public engagement after this as well. And I just wanted to encourage, just like the last public engagement was very creative, and it kind of hit people on multi levels. So I think this is an opportunity for us to really think outside of the box and to really engage our community in very creative, unique ways. And if it means we need to have a higher budget for mail outs or whatnot in order to have multiple touch points with people, I think this is really important. And I would just encourage staff to come forward with any kind of requests like that.
My understanding from discussion with staff that the engagement is being developed as we speak, all of course with the COVID lens, and I think that they plan to be coming back to us with what their intention is. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Breen?
Through the chair, that's the intention, and as I had stated earlier in the presentation, it would be helpful to have direction from the committee to proceed with that.
Thank you, Ms. Breen. So we can absolutely do that, but that's not part of the resolution that's on the floor. So I would turn to Director Salmon. Is your question in regards to the resolution on the floor, or is it more about the engagement after the fact? Director Salmon?
Well, it's both.
Well, can you give us your comments in regards to the resolution that's on the floor, and then I will go to you and Director Acton after the fact, and we can consider a different, an additional resolution. Please proceed.
Yeah, just to clarify some of my earlier comments about the harmonization versus modernization. So I'm assuming we will do this, and then we'll start all over with new bylaws. We'll have a whole new public engagement, open house, public meeting, public hearing process to do with the modernization.
Ms. Breen, can you provide the clarification to committee on that?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It's a different bylaw, and it will have a different consultation plan and process.
Okay, thank you. So that clarifies, just so, I mean, we're sort of having the feeling that we don't want to miss the public consultation part, but I think we're going to have a second kick at the whole thing, which I think the modernization to me is going to be most of where the public part is crucial, other than this part.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments, positions in regards to the resolution that's been read out, and it is for a recommendation to the board for first and second reading? Is everyone clear on the resolution? Director Acton, please proceed.
As to Director Wilson's comment that staff would be supportive, I guess I'd like to hear from staff that they would be supportive because, when we give a referral, it doesn't come with staff support or anything that is, we just send the referral and then we wait for it to come back. And in the past, the APCs have not always gotten support from staff. So I think this is, I think it's our opportunity as a committee to decide, yes, we would like to have that. And if that means more staff time, then so be it, that we want to be able to support our APCs in this process.
Thank you, Director Acton. I will call on Ms. Breen, who I believe has had multiple engagements with many of our APCs and individual members and chairs and the likes. So yeah, we can absolutely hear from her, but just reminding everyone we're looking to making a recommendation to the board right now, and I think we've got time to craft how the engagement with the APCs and how the public engagement is going to go forward. So Ms. Breen, please, in regards to Director Acton's question.
Through the chair, staff is pleased to support the APCs through presentations or however staff can support the APCs in that process to understanding where we're at with the HOCP draft bylaw.
Okay, I'd like to get the question on the table. Everyone's read or heard the resolution read out. It's for first and second reading, recommendation to the board. I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Zero opposed. The motion carries. In regards to the engagement and if need be, APC referral, is there anybody want to propose anything in regards to that? Are you comfortable with what our staff have said will be their process for engagement? Turn to committee. Director Yanni DiNardo, you got your hand up first.
Thank you so much. What I thought I heard from staff is they would like a recommendation on that, or are they just going ahead with their with that consultation? Because what I understood is they want direct.
I understand that staff are looking for direction on engagement, and Ms. Breen, please proceed with what is it that you would like to hear from committee as a recommendation to the board on engagement?
Through the chair, a recommendation that staff proceed with a plan for engagement for a public information session, and which would be separate from, we would be proceeding with engagement with the APCs as part of the referral. So that would be considered as part of that, a separate recommendation for development of public information. Thank you.
So just for clarification, we just give the direction that a plan be developed. We don't have to create the plan here and they will come back to us. Director Yanni DiNardo.
That's what I wanted to move, but if you're just clarifying that now.
Ms. Breen?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. Thank you.
Director Acton? Well, hang on. Director Yanni DiNardo has the floor. Apparently she's moving that resolution. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Wilson, who just jumped across my screen. So it's been moved and seconded. Director Acton, please proceed.
Thank you. I have never seen this in a public engagement so far, but it would be nice to have kind of a matrix that we, like a goal of how many people we would like to engage, because we will have a public engagement and we'll hear things like, oh no, that's 6%, that's horrible. So a baseline number that could be the goal and that is acceptable for making decisions on or acceptable as doing the due diligence of community engagement. I know we can't physically knock on everyone's door, but we've made the effort, and we have the number that says yes, we've done that. And I think in the past it's been 10%, and so I'd like to see something like that on there, especially in a time during COVID. And this is such a huge change that's happening for the CVRD. I think it's something that we can really goal for, and it would be important to do that.
So staff are listening and engaged, and we'll come back with a plan. And I would encourage any director on this call that if they want to provide input to staff in the crafting of the engagement plan, that they absolutely do it. I wouldn't recommend it's best practice for us to design it on the fly here. So I go to Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I would just suggest that as directors, we also support the staff with our communications as well, with our own social media and what we do as well to reach as many people. So we could support that.
Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo. Director Smith.
So I'd like some clarification, because I understood Coralie to say development of public information. She didn't say public engagement. So there are two different things, one information, one engagement. Can we have clarification on that, please?
Through the
Ms.
chair.
Breen, please proceed.
Thank you. Through the chair, to clarify, both information and engagement. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands in the air, question is very clear that the information and engagement be developed and brought back to committee. It's a recommendation of the board. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. I look to Ms. Harrison. We have the one item on today's agenda has been addressed. We've had a subsequent resolution for recommendation to the board. We now proceed. Director Smith.
Yeah, I have a question, and I am not sure where to ask it. So are you headed for the end of the meeting, or would I have an opportunity at this time to ask a question of staff?
We, at this point, don't have an item on the floor for discussion. We've proceeded past through that. Is it a question that you want to have asked in a public forum, and is it related to what we were discussing, or perhaps what's the nature of your discussion? This is very specific to this item, this meeting.
Right. This is to the HOCP and the MOCP. In the document that we received in September, one of the things that I noticed, it talked about a phase 3 regionalization. And I just wanted to know how many meetings staff has already had in regards to a regionalization of the direction that we're headed. So it would be one step after we finish with our MOCP, and then moving into the municipalities with the regionalization. So I just wanted to know how that's moving along also.
So before you answer, Ms. Breen, fair enough, and we want everybody to have clarity on this. I know that you may not have had that question to you in advance, but I'm really reluctant to go down another whole stream of discussion. But can you provide an answer to Director Smith? You're muted.
Certainly through the chair, the concept of regionalization of OCPs has, we wanted to just flag that for committee as a consideration. There's been no planning, and it's only been a discussion amongst the regional planning directors as something that we may all discuss kind of going forward. and nothing really more than that.
Dr. Smith? Excellent. And obviously that's a good point to be flagged. And if there is any further discussion, I would hope that Ms. Breen might provide us an update if there is any further discussion on that item. I believe we're now to item number 4, which is question period. And I would ask Ms. Harrison if there are any questions being posed to the chair on today's single item agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have 2 submissions. Start the timer.
Please proceed.
Thank you. The first submission is from Cliff Evans, and it reads, Mr. Chair, how can staff just remove the regulatory powers from OCPs that would stand up in court of law? Will the zoning then become the new recognized powers that would stand up in the court of law?
So I'm definitely not a legal expert, but it has been my understanding in the dozen or so years that I've been here that the OCP, while recognized as a legal document, is the guiding document for a community, and the regulatory document has always been the zoning bylaw, and it's usually in confusion between the two. So staff's recommendations to put all the regulatory authorities are to remove them from the OCPs and put them into zoning is, I think, a cleanup and a rationalization that makes sense and is the basis of sound planning principles. That's my best answer on a fairly complex question. Next item, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next submission is from Susan Kaufman, and it reads, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you to staff for providing additional information for the directors and members of the public watching. It was very helpful. I am, however, concerned that the overall process is not expected to conclude until the end of 2022. Can you confirm that Ms. Breen acknowledged that the DPAs presented with the agenda package were not presented to the APCs for information and consideration? Units per hectare, one document stated 2 units per hectare. Bylaw 4340, Area E example, Wake Lake Development Policy. Removed from the OPC but does not appear to be covered in the explanation table. Why? I do not believe the discussion question posed in my public input were addressed. How will the harmonized OCP reconcile with the individual zoning bylaws prior to modernization in late 2022? Several inconsistencies were noted based on information provided by staff and directors today. Would the committee only be approving first reading, thus allowing more information and participation of the APCs and public before proceeding further? Respectfully, Susan Kaufman.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. I made a couple of notes, and I'm going to try and unpack this. There was a lot of specificity in some of her presentation, and I haven't. We're just hearing it for the first time. Firstly, just in regards to whether or not questions posed in her remarks to the committee and the public input portion of the meeting, my understanding is the purpose of public input is to provide input on matters being considered to assist the directors in getting a sense of the the material that's being covered. I don't ever believe that when questions are posed to in the public input period that there's never been an intention that staff are supposed to be answering as part of their presentation to us, that they should be answering questions that the public have put during the public input period. So I hope that's clear, people, when they submit information for public input, they can ask questions, but I don't believe that that's a place where they're necessarily going to be getting a response from staff. It's very easy to get a response from staff by contacting the staff that are making the presentations and providing the information to directors. Secondly, in regards to the material that's been presented to us today, I believe Ms. Kaufman posed the question, was what was presented to us today, or the version of what was presented to us today, the same information that was presented to APCs a number of months ago? And I don't have to have 100% certainty in this, but the material that was presented to APCs and what was discussed and provided back to staff, I would be very surprised if it wasn't changed from when the APCs first looked at it. This has been an iterative, evolving process that has culminated in, actually it isn't culminated, but it has reached a point where we have this packet of information being presented to us, and we are further suggesting that there will be referrals and opportunities, not just for directors, but APC chairs, APCs, and members of the public to comment and provide input on this. So I don't believe that there's a very good chance that what was presented to the various APCs over several months is exactly the same package that was presented to us today. And I believe that was 3 of the 4 questions that she asked. Is there another in there that you can unpack from that, Ms. Harrison, that I might not have answered? I think it would have been the last one. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I've just moved it into a different folder. I'm just grabbing it for you now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last paragraph, several inconsistencies were noted based on information provided by staff and directors today. Would the committee only be approving first reading, thus allowing more information and participation of APCs and public before proceeding further?
Thank you. So it's very clear that there was a suggestion that we just do first reading, and it was put forward, and the committee, we tested the House. The committee said we're prepared comfortably to move to first and second reading. Staff have indicated that there will be multiple opportunities for input and changes and additions to this package. So clearly, first reading was considered and rejected by the committee. The recommendation is for first and second reading moving forward. And obviously, this group is comfortable in that recommendation and the opportunities for making changes. So with that, I am concluding that the question period is over, and I would, a nod from Ms. Harrison. That brings us to number 5.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Smith, second by Director Kuhn. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. See everybody back here at